Metaphor's director is right. Games should be about more than money. What a novel idea, right? What a novel idea. Weird. I mean, honest to God, it is almost just shocking to hear somebody in the industry developing games talk about this notion anymore. I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? It should also be about gambling. Yo, somebody ban that guy. Bro, it's funny how much we end up talking about this in here. It's like, Jesus Christ, if so many of these companies, that have gotten to the point of just becoming horrific shells of what they once were. They created great games in the past, and they've become these juggernauts of greed that just don't really give a crap about anything anymore besides scamming people out of money. It's not about what the essence of video games really are, which is having fun, for the developer to create fun content, good content for us, because ultimately that's at the core of what, the symbiotic relationship between a developer and a consumer really is a good developer creates great content and involves, quite often involves us in the process to an extent. They're open about what they're developing. They involve us in the process when they can. And, they want feedback. They're interested in constructive criticism. Not that that's always easy, because you got a lot of toxic people in the world and stuff like that. But, you've got good developers out there that, that's kind of what they do. They take care of their consumers, and they're interested in creating good, fun, quality content. And, what happens whenever that is something that gets accomplished is that you're successful, right? You become renowned for doing that kind of thing. You make money because you're making banger games. People are buying your games, and the opposite happens whenever you don't do that. And I mean, there's this premise that I talk about a lot in the industry, where we've watched a lot of these companies that we've lifted up at some point in the past to become these giant juggernauts of greed. They were good at one point. Whether you want to talk about Blizzard or Activision, which are really the same company anymore, right? They are the same company, Activision, Blizzard. You talk about Ubisoft, you talk about EA. I mean, the list goes, on and on and on, right? What they once were companies that were very good at what they did. They were highly focused on taking care of us and giving us great content and polished products, and so we took care of them. And now they got to this point where they're so big that they just try to railroad us all the time. And so now we're seeing companies start to falter, because they're not succeeding with the subpar to mediocre content that they've been pushing out for for years now, like Ubisoft, right? Ubisoft is faltering. They've been faltering for years, and now they're gaslighting us by saying it's our fault. We got articles coming out from executives under Ubisoft saying, well, it's not enough to make good games anymore. And it's like, no, good games are still doing well. There's still plenty of good games in the industry that are killing it, I mean, you can go take a look. There's plenty of good games, but let's be very fair here. The industry is very polluted. There's a lot of companies, a lot of developers making a lot of games, and people are honestly, in my opinion, tired of the same old crap they're getting from some of these companies that, we're just not willing to, we're more diligent about the way we're spending our money now. We're not willing to waste our money on the same stuff we've seen just being kind of reskinned anymore, right? And so, we're being gaslit because what has worked for a number of years now from some of these big greedy companies isn't working anymore, which is quite comical almost. I don't necessarily want to see anybody lose their jobs, but this is what needs to happen. Good companies stay, they get lifted up. Bad companies dissolve and they go away. We don't need bad companies in the industry. We need companies that are willing to be successful by doing right by us. That's the way this needs to work. We've made a bad bed for ourselves as gaming enthusiasts and consumers in some instances, right? And we need to remake that bed, if you will. Yeah, and get rid of some of the bad companies that are a part of that. And so, but I mean, this is not a notion that should be mind-blowing to people. This is actually what it's about. Games should be about more than just money. Obviously, the industry it's a business, and these businesses need to be profitable to sustain and to continue to bring us more content. And there are still companies out there that are very profitable and they're doing good things and they bring us good content. Look at Larian, look at From Software. I mean, these are companies that have been around for quite some time that are continuing to do great things. And then you again, go back to some of those examples of companies that are faltering and have been for quite some time, and they want to act like they don't know what's wrong. They lost their way a long time ago. Their creative essence is gone. They're polluted with business-minded people, not gaming-minded people. I honestly believe that. I've seen it for a long time from the outside looking in. It's something where they're more concerned with how they can railroad us about money than they can looking at it as a symbiotic relationship of, they take care of us and we take care of them. That's not how it is anymore. They just want more from us, and they've looked at us as expendable for way too long. It's not working anymore in at least many ways. Metaphor Refantasio director Katsura Hashino recently said that he has no interest in games that don't offer a glimpse of the humanity behind them. Even if they are very polished experiences, to Hashino, something with heart and a creative vision, even if it's a very rough draft, is far more valuable than a game that feels like it was created by executives in a boardroom. Thank you. Before Metaphor Hashino directed Persona 3, 4, and 5, he departed the series he'd become most closely associated with to pursue a new creative challenge, even though the easier option would have just been to make another Persona. I have a lot of respect for Hashino's words, and they resonated with me as someone who values vision over almost everything else in a game. In trying to please everyone, you please no one. I'd wager that a lot of people feel the same way, whether they realize it or not. We're beginning to see the consequences of a lack of innovation with the faltering fortunes of Ubisoft, which hasn't really changed up its third-person open-world RPG formula in years. There's another company that comes to mind, kind of in the same boat, Bethesda. Star Wars Outlaws feels like a game crafted around mechanics rather than something that began as an idea and grew into something bigger. Is K-Vest a smuggler because it enables the exploration of multiple worlds and justifies the game's stealth mechanics? There's no way of knowing what Ubisoft's creative process is. The studio may very well have been creatively excited by the idea of switching up from the standard Jedi formula. However, playing Outlaws, you get the sense that the game has been designed from the top down, rather than growing out of something organic. You just can't shake that feeling that Outlaws was created to try and appeal to everyone. The best stories often begin with a single sentence or idea, not market research. Obviously, repeating something that's already succeeded once is often just good business. If you follow a formula for success, the project is inherently less risky. Even Hashino's Metaphor has Persona's DNA all over it. It's completely fine for a developer to explore ideas within a genre they have significant experience in. However, everything that might be considered derivative about Metaphor is secondary to the story the game tells and the themes it explores. From the first minute, you can feel what Metaphor is trying to do, and that cohesion is what draws you in and makes you want to keep playing. Reach for the stars. They talk about stars. That's funny. I obviously have not read this article yet. I just found it this morning. That's the way we do this. So, in contrast, think about Starfield. Supposedly, Bethesda had a dream of making a spacefaring RPG, and the studio is always prattling on about how it's such a technical marvel. But what was the dream? To generate planets with realistic lighting, or to invoke the feeling of curiosity and exploration present in every human? From the outside, Starfield appears to be a game molded around Bethesda's technical prowess, rather than an experience that tries to draw out specific emotions in the player. The main draw of a game like this should be exploration, and yet exploration in Starfield is one of the most banal things that you can do in a video game. Starfield's universe shouldn't feel less interesting to explore than that of Mass Effect, a game released in 2007 that was made within far more limiting technical restraints. Why is Mass Effect so interesting in comparison? Because Casey Hudson and BioWare constructed the game from a core idea: what would happen if humanity was suddenly thrust into a universe-spanning society where there were no longer the dominant political species. It's playing on the social dynamics and politics of every human society and blowing it up into a space fiction series with associated lore, characters, and plots. It's a love letter to the sci-fi settings the writers enjoyed growing up, rather than a vague attempt to wow gamers with cutting-edge technology and blank planets. What's up, Reject? What's up, Soup? Give me 1 second, guys. A common theme among independent games that have gone on to become huge successes is that the creators never expected the success they ended up getting, and were often creating the games for themselves and niche audiences. I've said this for a long time now. I really think that the more inventive, more creative side of the industry really is, the foundation for that is laid through the smaller developers in the industry, the indie part of the industry. It seems like it most often. Not all the time, but most often. Gareth Damian Martin of Citizen Sleeper has spoken about how the game was created to represent their complicated feelings of identity and the precarious nature of the gig economy. Billy Basso says Animal Well was inspired by how you feel about your home when you're a child. Even when you think you know everything about it, there's always more secrets to discover. Local Thunk has said Balatro was a throwaway project, not something that was ever meant to be a big bid for success. Banger. The point is, you can't always reverse engineer your way to a win. Just because something worked once doesn't mean it's going to continue to work. Executives should always foster the creativity of people and leverage their experience to balance their ideas with the realities of game development. This is how these relationships become symbiotic, rather than parasitic and creativity sapping. We're seeing a plethora of remakes and sequels, and while they often do work, players are eventually going to get tired of the constant rehashing of the same stories. Publishers need to be willing to bet on new ideas if they want long-term success, and that begins with backing creatives. I'll give you a perfect example here of this too. Take a developer like Mint Rocket, whom everybody initially thought was an indie company, but they're not. Mint Rocket developed Dave the Diver, and what were they? They were a small offshoot development team from Nexon, right? So Nexon said, hey, it seems like they understand this premise. At least to an extent. They took a small development team, a cohesive development team that had a cool idea, and they were like, you guys go and do this. This seems like you guys know what you're doing. We're going to let this small team of people go and work on this creative process, this unique idea you have, and see what you can come up with. And it ended up becoming Dave the Diver. So it's not like you have to be an indie developer to have a small team of unique thinkers and have a nice creative process behind creating unique games, creative, fun, filled titles for people to experience. Large developers can do the same thing. They just have to have people at the top that are observant enough and knowledgeable enough about what video games are and what the development process is to be able to see when they can do this kind of thing, to pick out certain teams that have good chemistry, to be able to create these kinds of unique experiences. It's not enough anymore to have juggernaut companies take a dump truck of money and dump it on all of their developers and just go, okay, everybody, we're doing this. We're going to make this. It just doesn't work, dude. You know? Not most of the time. So, very good article. It is quite comical that the first thing I thought of was Bethesda and they brought up Starfield. It's quite funny. But look, I mean, this is one of those notions that how long have we been talking about this in this community, right? I mean, as something that we have a huge focus on in promoting a better industry for us as gaming enthusiasts and consumers, this is something we talk about quite often. And it's quite apparent that this is an issue for many, many big companies in this industry. So, Jack Coleman, great article, my friend. I really, really enjoyed reading this. And I agree. Very good.